Since we have only 10 minutes, I would allow Sweden to run the demo quickly, but just to give a context of what we are doing, I think over the last 2 days, you might have seen many of the demos of templates which are available on different cloud service providers, like AWS, IBM presented theirs. If you look a couple of years to the future, what exactly blockchain is trying to achieve is trying to bring a consortium of organizations together where they can work together on a particular use case which is important to them. When you start with that kind of a thinking, and when you try to get your partners together, and many of the partners may be as big as you, it is extremely difficult to tell them to join your cloud service provider. Each of them may already have contracts with their own cloud service providers. So it is important that we need a tool, an automation layer, which is completely agnostic of the cloud service provider underneath. So what we are demonstrating today is that tool, which completely abstracts the CSP part of it, and where you can bring up networks, and more importantly, it has a decentralized management console, which means that each organization will have their own console. It's not the initiating organization which controls the network, and each of them can bring up their networks and then join the consortium. That is what CDPaaS is all about. And why we are doing this? So it's mainly because in the last 18 months, we have been working on multiple Hyperledger projects. And every project which we go to, everyone has their own preference for a CSP. And you want to bring up or bootstrap the networks in their CSP. And when they try to join their partners, they have a different CSP. So this is becoming a big operational overhead. And what we thought is that a simple automation tool, it is not simple, it's a little bit complex, but an automation tool would help. And there is already technologies existing in that space. So that's what we do. We focus only on Hyperledger, and specifically Hyperledger Fabric. We are one of the training providers, which Brian was speaking about, one of the 5 training providers across the globe for Hyperledger Fabric. So our expertise is all about Hyperledger Fabric. So what we have today is that we have major CSPs providing templates. Obviously, some of them are trying to incorporate other clouds, like IBM has an initiative to bring in AWS instances also into their network. But from that's what the CSPs are doing. But obviously, there is not much of an interest of bringing other CSPs, because that's not their business model, right? They want to sell most of their computing power. And there are also boutiques, small vendors who have small playgrounds, which is not really production grade deployments. So what we will see today is CDPaaS, and Sweden will take you through it. What are the features as well as the demo? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Baiju. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, okay, now it's better. So, as Baiju mentioned, the basic things that we actually faced during doing the projects is that there was a lot of repeat in terms setting up Fabric project by project. So therefore, we said, okay, why repeating those steps again and again? So let's automate them. So essentially, that also actually going towards adopting, in terms of adoption of that technology in the on the business side, because most of the companies, they're not that much techie, right? So they don't know about infrastructure, they never heard about Docker or Kubernetes, for example. So it doesn't, the way that is done right now on the Fabric network, if you go there, a lot of people get confused what they're doing, and because that there is a lot of things they just don't know. So we're putting that abstraction layer there. And of course, we wanted to have everything done in a way that it is not dependent on any cloud provider APIs. Okay? Of course, it is done in a way that it should be simple enough from any IT guy to deal with it. Just knowing about basic things about infrastructure and Fabric. So that is actually leading to something that where we want to get to a point where we are actually more focused on about building business logic and coding chain code instead of dealing with infrastructure and networking concerns and issues. Okay? So I'll go to the demo right away. Essentially what is about, well, I won't start everything from scratch. I preset a couple of things there. But what I'm improvising here is that we have two financial institutions. I named them Maple and actually Funding that are actually creating their own organizations, and they want to bring their own peers on their own infrastructures. For that purpose, I'm actually using two cloud providers right now. And actually, I'll show you that right away. So I have here on the screen that is AWS Management Console, and as you see, there are 3 instances running. Those instances, by the way, are actually working in a cluster. We didn't use for that particular deployment Kubernetes. It's actually orchestrated by Docker Swarm. That is actually the simplest things to do so far. Kubernetes, unfortunately, comes with a bit of complexity on top, and that is another deployment scenario we also support. And I do have as well a couple of instances that are hosted on DigitalOcean. Actually, the instance I'll be using in that particular scenario is actually that one, which is a 2 GB Ubuntu instance with 1 CPU. So what I have to do essentially is, and by the way, as Baiju said, that console is not meant to be used as a central console by all organizations. So we're provisioning that every organization will actually deploy that console on their own infra, or maybe some third party like like ChainDigit will host it for them if they don't want to deal with that. So what I can see there, I have created 2 actually. It is the point is that you can see those Maple and Funding.com organizations. Both of them are actually deployed. But bootstrapping a new organization is actually as simple as you capture the name, you put the MSP ID, the domain name. You actually decide on what network to run. Have in mind those networks are actually abstractions that are connected to the different clouds. So for example, MapleNet is actually connected to DigitalOcean, and I have 2 more, which is FundNet and OrderNet, that are connected to AWS. But you could have as many as you like. So that means actually that even you're a single organization, you could run your peers across clouds. No one is actually forcing you to host all of your peers on the same cloud provider. So once you pick actually the network, I will just add the organization, and then you can actually type in what peers, you just name them, you put the external endpoint. So have in mind, usually those will be your domain names that will look like something, walmart.fabric.com. Here I can use, and I've been using the IPs of the machines on the cloud. For example, I can take that one. And you just have to paste it here, and then to decide on what port. Of course, the port, that's something you have to know up front, so it can be shared with the other organizations so they can connect with each other. And of course, here we have something that Docker actually stack. We are using that, if you're aware of that, it's a stack file that actually allows us to deploy a Docker container, or run Docker containers on cluster of machines. And here those labels are actually allowing you to tell Docker Swarm where to run them. Or it's like a load balancing kind of a thing. So you can dedicate a bunch of your machines, name them properly, and then you can say, okay, run those peers on those containers. Wherever they are, it doesn't really matter. So I won't bootstrap because bootstrapping alone takes around 2 to 3 minutes. So I will be actually just reusing the organizations that we already have. So as you see, the one that I just created is with Staro Initio. And what I would do actually, you can actually as well list the ordering service. So as you see, that is an overview of the ordering service that I'm running right now. And actually to prove that, I'm actually SSH into the, that is the DigitalOcean Ubuntu instance, by the way. Yeah, I will, just a second. Thanks for that. Appearance, I think. Okay, I'll make it 16. Now it's better? Oh, it's a refresh issue, I guess. Wait, let me drag. That's strange. Okay, so anyways, if I do like Docker service ls, typo, those two are actually the two peers that belong to Mapawing, and they're run by Docker. And if I go to the AWS instance, just try to change the setting again. It's still, I don't know, it's on my monitor, it looks perfectly fine. I think it's something with the projector. Maybe I can wait. That might help. Plug and plug. It's the same thing, it might be the projector. So if I do Docker service ls, so you will see here a bunch of entries, but those are actually the Kafka nodes, the Zookeeper nodes, and all of that. So essentially, as you see here, you don't really need to think about all of those YAML files that you need to generate. Think about the private key, the PKI, and all of that. So it all happens behind the scene. And by the way, we have different options to deal with the private keys where you store them to secure. It could be, of course, on the file system, or it could be in a crypto store, or we can go as secure as using HSM for those. Yeah.
Question, and to be fair, I actually intend to use the system. It looks great. So what happened? What happens if you guys go down or disappear? The network still stays up, and the config files are there. You just have to
Right,
deal with
right,
the hell,
yeah.
right?
So there are different options here you can go with. So our vision is, again, we don't want to control or see data that, that client has. It's the offering here is more or less you choose where you want to host your peers and you own them, right? So that is the nature of blockchains and distributions anyways. So if that client and the UI you are seeing here disappears, it does not affect at all the network itself. Okay? Who owns the machines? This is the one who owns the data and can see it and do whatever they like. But you are not actually, you can scrap that thing completely and go on with a regular, SSH2 and command line and all of that. There is no coupling, there is nothing specific from Fabric Network perspective that we are doing. Okay?
Excellent.
So it's the standard Fabric. We haven't modified it or something to make it work. So essentially what we are using in the background, we essentially always look at the latest and greatest technologies and libraries and tools available out there. It doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel, right? So for that purpose, we are using actually pretty handy. It's Ansible for those of you who knows it. There is another actually open source project, Ansible Tower, which allows us to actually manage all of those Ansible jobs to control the machines and all of that. We actually have also a provisioning capability that is actually done through Terraform. Okay? Of course, the APIs that you're seeing here, it's all hosted on a Spring Boot application. So that's how we get the REST APIs exposed. Okay, so let's now do the following. I will just quickly show you how I actually can. You can see, by the way, the channels here. And what I'll do, I'll see that channel actually is deployed. So what I can do, I can go to actually my organization. I can select one of my peers, okay? And as you see, that peer is not part of a channel yet. So joining a channel is as simple as clicking on Join Channel. And then if I go back, probably won't be able to see that, unfortunately. But as you see, actually, I have mapped the file system on the host file system for Docker. So this is where actually the block of the channel actually just was created. And actually, you can join as many peers of your blockchain of your organization as you want, one by one. Okay. So, and as you see here now, my peer is actually part of a channel transfer, and we also list the endpoints of the channel which is the ordering services belongs to. And I think it's we're now over time. Yeah, quick questions. Just I don't want to hold up the other session.
If a new organization wants to join an existing consortium,
Right.
How do we exchange the crypto?
Yeah, right now the crypto, we don't really need to deal with that because those organizations are bootstrapped by the same client. So essentially what we need from the organizations that are newly joining an existing consortium, it's the private certificates of their TOS CA or the root CA of their organization. So this is a functionality that you can actually, as an ordering service, if you want to include a new organization into that ordering service and then on a particular channel of that ordering service, all you have to do is actually to upload those certificates to the management console where you run the ordering service and just update through a configuration update. There are a couple of steps that are actually being performed behind the scene that are quite different compared to when you generate the Genesis log, by the way, of the ordering service. Yeah.
What's the relationship of the account of Sketchboard and their identity of their Anshore Fabric network? How do you map the relationship of this and to the real blockchain network?
Yeah. I'll explain. So essentially when you bootstrap an organization, what you start with is actually just the modeling, right? So at that point of time, you just have the model set up, but you don't have the organization up and running. When you decide where you want to run it, you hit the bootstrap button, right? And out of that model, then the real peers are going up in the background. So what happens actually if a peer when you are adding a new organization and all of that, there is this service discovery functionality that we are using actually to dynamically show what is the current network, because a peer could be up or down, right? Another organizations may be joining and you don't know upfront what their peers are because you have no control over them. That is the basic idea behind. But as soon as, actually, by the way, there is a setting here when you set up your peers, you can actually mark it as an anchor peer, which actually gives the other organization a way to fetch the peers of your organization. So you actually can see what are the other peers in the network through the discovery service of Fabric.
So where is your MSP directory stored? Is it stored in a single machine, or all the MSP directory of all the organizations are stored in one machine?
They are. We have to be specific here what we mean by you're probably talking about the crypto, like the PKI, right? So there are different. There are the public certificates that belong to the organization, and as I mentioned, or the certs of the CA, the root CA, and TOS CA. Those are actually stored in a folder on the system on where we run the network. Okay. Then actually they're brought back to the client. So the client you're seeing here is actually running on a different machine that could be or could not be part of the same cluster of machines. It doesn't matter. But we fetch those actually certificates on the client. So from there on, all you need to do is just say, hey, send them to the other, to another ordering service so you can start, join a new consortium, for example. All the private keys of the users, of the peers, and all of that, as I mentioned, there are different deployments ways. You can either store them on the file system, use a crypto store, or use HSM by, of course, enrolling through a certificate authority of the organization.